I am a writer, but I'm also a reader. I'm assuming that if you're here, you are also a writer and reader. And so let's get into one of our favorite things as readers and one of our biggest hopes as writers, which is bookstores. So let's start off with let's talk about the building of relationships with bookstores to try to get our books into those stores. It might seem like common sense, but starting locally is going to be your best bet at getting your book into bookstores. So if you're a writer, and like I said before, you're probably a reader, you already probably are going into these bookstores, right? So when you're going into them, you're building some kind of, even if they just see your face regularly, that's a good start. Many independent bookstores are going to have an option for you to contact them about your book. So sometimes they'll have like a link on how to get your book considered for being on the shelves. Usually like a form. They may require you to send a copy of your book. If that is the case, they're probably not going to they're probably not going to send it back to you. So that's going to be, a cost that you're going to have to eat. But you're getting copies hopefully at a good discount. So I know that like my book, I'm getting a copy roughly $10 instead of the 27 that it's costing to sell on with a web on the internet. So yeah, you're gonna go on their website, find any information they have about stocking your book, maybe events, like maybe they're going to do a book reading or a book signing. Sometimes they have special space for that. And find out what they have on the website. If, some of them may not have something on the website, but if you're going into these bookstores regularly, you can, while you're buying other books or shopping around, you can ask like, hey, I'm a local author. Do you have any section where you would stock local authors? Doesn't mean if they have one that you're definitely in. There's things to be considered, but it's a good start. Also, this goes back to one of our first lessons, but if you're on Ingram Spark or you're self-publishing through one of those kind of websites, not KDP, it's going to help you meet any criteria that a bookstore may have. KDP, most bookstores aren't going to work with. I mentioned that in that video, but yeah, if you're going on to uh, Ingram Spark, that's going to meet almost their criteria. They just don't want to give money to Amazon because Amazon wants to put them out of business. So can't blame them. All right. So when it comes to big bookstore chains, there are two that I'm aware of that are kind of bigger than like 5 or 6 shops. Because every once in a while a local bookstore opens a second, and that's great. But that's not what I'm talking about here. Those are still independent. So I'm talking about the ones that I'm aware of are Barnes and Noble and Books a Million. Um, you're probably very familiar with Barnes and Noble. Books a Million tends to be a little more regional, I believe. But they're still bigger than 5 or 6. There's a fair, they're a little more warehousey from what I've seen. But yeah, I don't have any like that are really local, but I've been there's some in the state that I live in, so that I know about them. And there's a couple things to consider when you're trying to get your book into those kind of stores. So let's start with Books a Million for a second, because I think that their process is very simple. I don't know that it's I don't. I submitted about a week or so ago to their process. I will probably not know for another month or two minimum. Um, but with them, there's a form on their website. You print it out and fill it out, and you send it off with a copy of your book. Like I said earlier, don't expect to get that copy of your book back, um, and they will consider it in that process. Barnes and Noble is kind of a huge difference between not only Books a Million, but definitely different than independent bookstores. So Barnes and Noble, if you're if you're self-publishing through Ingram Spark or most of the ones that I'm familiar with that aren't KDP, your book is likely going to be on Barnes and Noble's site. So people can buy your book through Barnes and Noble's website. They can buy your book for their Nook, the digital copy on the Nook app or the Nook device. Um, so your book is already in their system, and I see that as only a benefit because it means that it's going to be less work for them if they start considering putting your book in physical stores. Um, if you're checking off a bunch of other criteria and they don't have to do any work to get your book in the system, that's only going to help them to make that decision. Now, Barnes and Noble is I haven't read anything specific about this. I've just noticed this from going into Barnes and Nobles recently in the last 2 or 3 years, but they seem to be rebranding a bit with the way that they're building their individual stores. They're a lot more similar aesthetic and vibe wise to a local independent bookstore. Um, they have gotten rid of that, like, where that, I don't want to say warehouse, but like big brick and mortar feel that they had before, of like, oh, there's so many sections and there's so much going on, and it's all kind of uniform. Now they've got, like, it's very curated, still bigger than a lot of average bookstores, but curated, giving that aesthetic. Another thing that has kind of that I've noticed in that process is that a lot of those bookstores, those Barnes and Noble stores, are getting they have local authors sections a little bit, and they also have their events calendars seem to be geared towards local stuff too. Obviously, they want to get big names in as well, but they're doing they're helping promote local people. I think that what is happening there is probably that management in individual stores has been given some license to kind of, ingratiate yourselves to the community and, like, become part of the community and not be part of that, like, corporate conglomerate feel. Again, this probably can work to your advantage. Whether you're talking about local independent shops or those couple of big bookstore chains that I'm talking about, there's a few things that are going to help you either way. One is, your social media presence is gonna be checked out. You're gonna, they're gonna want to see that you have a following. If the following can be small, but if you have a following that's even, decent size and dedicated, that's going to be a good start. Um, Reviews are going to be really helpful. If you have, the more reviews and the better the reviews that you have, that's going to obviously help, because then they're going to say, hey, this is something that people are responding to. And, it's not that hard to get, 3 or 4 good reviews from, parents or your cousins or whatever, but to have, the more and more reviews you get, the better that's going to help you. And also, one bad review in a sea of reviews is not going to be a make it or break it. So having as many reviews as you can get is going to help you with bookstores. It's going to help you with everything. Um, and then lastly, like, they're going to want to engage with you, and figure out how to get, how, they're going to want you to engage with them, I should say. They're going to want you, especially local independent bookstores, they're going to want you to advertise, oh, my book is available at this bookstore. Oh, I'm going to be doing an event on this date at this bookstore to sign or to do a reading or whatever. And if you're doing that, yes, it is helping them, but it's also helping you a lot, right? Because then you're saying, hey, I'm going to be at a bookstore, and that gives you credibility. So this is a win-win for everybody. And then the other thing that I think that this is specific to local and independent bookstores, is that you can go on bookshop.org, and you can tell people, you can ask your social media following, go on to bookshop.org, and if you're going to be buying my book anyway, consider going there and buy it and tag, give credit to your local bookstore, because if you give credit to your local bookstore, especially like, oh, I have my whole following in, the Boston area or the Raleigh area or whatever, and my following is localized to me, let's say that, and they all go to the same 2 or 3 bookstores and start buying through the website, that those bookstores are going to are going to see that their people are wanting that book. They're getting credit. You shouted out them. You're giving them a little bit of credit, and then they may say, "Okay, well, I'll stock 5, 6 copies and see how they do." And they may be interested and they may read it and say, "Oh, I love this book." Because if they put that little tag on there, that all bookstores have of like, this is a employee recommend or employee favorite, like that's going to be helpful too, right? So if you can just get in their headspace a little bit, that's going to be good. All right, so like the last thing I want to talk about is don't get frustrated. You're a self-publisher, and while it is easy to, self-publishing, one of the benefits is we are going to be quicker to publish. It's less patience and less time, and in a lot of ways to get to that publication date, but it is going to be longer to get into bookstores. You don't have the powerhouse or the weight of a traditional publishing house behind you to kind of say, hey, you should sell our book. And so you're doing all the work on your own. And that's okay. We signed up for that as self-publishers. So if you aren't getting in bookstores on publication day, or in that first month or two or even a year, don't worry about that. It's tough to say that, or it's tough to hear that, and to do that, but you gotta just keep in mind that a lot of times you're gonna get not a no, you're gonna get a not right now. I'll give you an example. One of the bookstores that I reached out to maybe a month or two ago, they told me that they don't take self-published books in the first year, and I was like, okay, that makes sense. So they want to see a year's worth of sales and reviews, and and this bookstore that I'm talking about is a very small bookstore. They have very limited space. That's another thing that you're going to get with a lot of independent bookstores, is they are going to be limited in their space. So just keep that in mind. And maybe you go back after 6 months or a year. If they give you a time frame, follow the time frame. If they don't give you a time frame, 6 months, a year, whatever, or if you've hit a big milestone, consider that. And while you're doing that, build your reviews. Try to get people to add you to their Goodreads TBR or their Storygraph TBR or any of the other social medias. These are all the ways you're going to build that up. And again, a lot of that's going to come post publication, and that's what's going to get you in bookstores. You don't have the history of a Penguin or a Random House, so you need to kind of build that, and that's fine. That's what we're in here for. Since my last video last week, I have gone through my publication day. It was this past Tuesday, and so I wanted to talk about some of the things that I learned, but I wanted to not rush into that. I want to give it a couple days. So next week, it will be more than a full week out of since my publication date, and we can talk about what I learned and hopefully what you can learn from my publication date, so that you don't make the same mistakes that I did, and so that you can repeat the same successes that I did. Yeah, so I'll see you next week, and please, if you haven't already, hit like and subscribe. I'm going to be doing these videos every week, letting you know what I am learning. This is kind of a learning journey for me, as well as hopefully I'm helping you learn about self-publishing. And so I hope that you liked this video, and I hope that you'll join me for more.